Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 192 of Real Blend, a podcast that's hosted, as always, by the Father, the Son, and the House of Gucci. On this week's show, Marvel has another show hitting Disney Plus that we're going to talk about. House of Gucci is in theaters, and ladies and gentlemen, Sir Ridley Scott joins us as the guest on this week's episode of Real Blend.
Sean, can you say that one more time?
Sir Ridley Scott is our guest on the Real Blend podcast, and someday over drinks at the next meetup we will tell you guys the full story of booking Ridley Scott on the show, because there's a reason that we say if it happens, and I just wanted to point that out to everybody.
Then there's a reason if we say if it happens 3 more times.
By we, I mean Kevin McCarthy, back from his cruise stateside once again. He works for Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Sean, Gabriel, Jacob. I, first of all, want to say, we also had Jason Reitman and Ivan Reitman on the show last week, so if you missed that,
terrific,
please go back and listen to that. And 2, to your joke, am I correct that that line was improvised? I read somewhere that Gaga improvised that line, which I was trying to... I watched the scene the other day of that scene again, and I wonder if they retook it or did she just do it on the set. I would love to ask her.
My understanding was, what I saw her say in an interview wasn't it that it was improvised in that moment, but that her and Jared were kind of joking around in between takes, and they came up with that and then decided to use it in that moment.
Cool. That is Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hello, Jakey. How are you?
Hi, buddy.
No, don't hold up the I Quit mug. Well, you are able to see the I Quit mug if you're watching us on YouTube.
It's for Kevin, because Kevin hasn't seen it yet.
Kevin has not seen it yet.
I'm looking at it now. I'm holding a Real Blend mug for a show that I haven't quit from.
Because he doesn't quit.
I'm going to very briefly shout out a very close friend of the show, Arthur Mingo, who is directing his first film now at this point.
Arthur!
And
Who denied us an interview request.
Oh, did he really?
He said national outlets only.
Oh, that's hysterical. And worked...
Hey, we're international, baby.
Yeah, it's true. Worked a Real Blend mug into one of his shots, and I think that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, really cool.
Awesome.
So if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you go down and hit subscribe, turn on your notifications. If you're listening to us in audio form, go to youtube.com/Real Blend Podcast, and we are over 5,000 subscribers, so I'm really excited about that. Have you signed up for Real Blend Premium? So the premium episode, a lot of the reviews that we get from people now are like, I really love the premium show, and that's been a ton of fun to see people reacting to that one, because it not only is it ad-free, you get an ad-free version of the show, you get an extra episode on Mondays and a newsletter from myself, but it's a looser feel. It's got a little more casual vibe to it. We play some games.
You mentioned when we have drinks together, I would almost equate it to if you were to hang out with us, grabbing a drink at a bar. That's 100%. That's sort of what the premium episodes are.
Blenders who have been to meetups will probably say that the Real Blend Premium energy
that's a good way of putting
is
it,
like a meetup energy.
I can't wait for the meetup we're going to do in 8 episodes.
Are we going to do that meetup in 8 episodes?
No, stop. He's saying things. You're going to get people yelling at me when you're just making stuff up. I tell you what, if anyone's 200? In Chicago in 8 episodes, Jake will make time to come by and say hi to every single one of you.
No, Jake's going to tweet his address out, and he'll do the meetup at his place.
All you got to do is look at my Twitter, and you can tell where I live. Very true. Tweet my address out.
I've discussed this problem with you before.
I'm going to be murdered one day.
Small warning, too. If you do decide to spend the night, you do not get sheets or blanket. So,
right.
You might want to bring
That's not true. That's not true. You don't get sheets.
Fair. By the time you're listening to this episode, we will have a bonus episode that is up on all of our normal channels, and it is Johannes Roberts, who stopped by for a very, very nerdy chat about the Resident Evil franchise.
Oh, that was so great.
And his new film, Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. He's a super fan of that game. He brought a lot of great detail to that movie. I was thrilled that Jake was there, because Jake grew up on those games and played them often, and so
I felt like whenever we asked him about Nemesis, he sort of had this moment where it kind of felt like he was like, "Oh, these guys know what they're talking about." Whenever we asked him when we were going to bring Nemesis in.
You knew what you were talking about, which was really good.
It's a collective effort.
I was like, zombies? So let's get to the weekly poll. We're getting to the Thanksgiving holiday, and it's Black Friday while you're listening to this episode. So if you're going out to shop, please be safe. If you find a PS5, please direct message me.
Or if you find an Xbox, new Xbox, please direct message me. I will.
Didn't these come out last week? You guys still can't buy it? I will buy it. Supply chain?
I will buy it. Believe me. Yes.
I don't know how I feel about you guys using the listeners to buy you guys.
I'll pay for it. Just help me find
Who's to say that one of our listeners doesn't work at PlayStation and just has or works at Microsoft and
if
has Xboxes?
If you want to send us all free PlayStation 5s, I will happily send you the address.
This is not an ad by any way, shape, or form. We are not sponsored by either of these.
We'd have a much better
consoles.
show if PlayStation sponsored our show.
I just need a foot in the door, for God's sakes. So
you're Sean O'Connell.
That doesn't get you very far at the local Walmart. Listeners in the U.S., we asked, do you traditionally go to the theater on Thanksgiving weekend? It is usually a very big going to the movies type holiday. Everybody eats the bulk of the day, and then in the evening, either you're sitting down for football. Football's kind of taken over Thanksgiving now, too, because they put on an evening game. But it used to be that people would head out to the theaters. And now, because we are, while not quite out of COVID, the theaters are brimming with new titles. We have Ghostbusters Afterlife, No Time to Die is still playing, Dune is still in theaters, Eternals is in theaters. So you have plenty of options. Encanto, the Disney movie is coming to theaters. House of Gucci will be there, so you have plenty of options. So we asked, if you go to the theaters for Thanksgiving holiday, and the choices were always have, no, and if there's something good. Little cushion. So, Jakey, where do you think the peoples went in this week's weekly poll?
I think the peoples went if there's something good.
They did. They just marginally nudged out no. 47% for if there's something good and 44% for no. Only 10% came back with always have. And I feel the number I'm paying attention to this week is Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yeah, because I think it's going to hold very well.
I do too. I think that the diehard people who really wanted to go see it went out opening weekend.
It'll have a good afterlife, you think?
It will have a good afterlife for sure.
Okay.
Yes, good. For sure. But
and
that's the movie too, where families are going to look at the board and say, like, what do I want to go see? You know, and is it House of Gucci? Is it a Marvel movie that's not getting a ton of buzz? Or are they going to go see something that's tried and true and diving into their thing? So
yeah.
That's my guess.
On a personal note, my answer to that question would have been no, because I was always a Christmas Day moviegoer.
Okay.
So for me, Thanksgiving was like eating and just feeling tired and chilling with your family. But like Christmas Day, that was my favorite day to go to the movies. Like I remember we'd get up and, open presents because so many films open Christmas Day, so many. Remember that's it was a huge opening day. So that's the holiday that I nowadays, just because of the business that we're in,
we've seen everything.
Luckily, right.
Or we have it on DVD sitting in our homes.
But as a kid, Christmas was the one that I went to.
Well, that's a weird thing about our jobs, though, is that the thing that people do to escape their work is our work.
Right.
So the idea of going to a theater on a day when I don't have to is tough. That's hard. That's what because I would vote no also. I don't think I've ever gone to the theaters on a Thanksgiving holiday, and it's because, like you said, we've seen almost everything that's coming out, and I wouldn't want to fight the crowds. Why do I want to fight crowds on Thanksgiving?
And I just, dude, and this is just a personal note. I was just driving home from work, and before we did the podcast, and it's normally like a 25-minute drive. It took me 50 minutes to get home, and I'm like, people are out, man. I do not want to be out on Thanksgiving Day. I mean, maybe it'll be lighter, but people, the roads are crazy again. They are.
This is a really good time for me to bring up. Michelle comes over to me and shows me her phone. She says, I know how much you're going to appreciate this. And it was a news report saying that the weather could be really horrible on Wednesday when everybody's traveling and could lead to delays. And I don't know if you've been listening long enough, then you know that one of my traditions the evening before Thanksgiving, because we never travel. We don't want to travel during the holidays. We did it once. It was a total nightmare. I decided in that moment we will never, ever do it again. And we've lived up to that promise. We'd never leave for the holidays. So Jake says this is the oldest man thing in the world to do, but I pour myself several Captain Morgan and Cokes, and I watch primarily I watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but I'm also paying attention to the Weather Channel for these live look-ins at the airport, so I can see the faces.
I just picture you on a front porch in a rocking chair with like an old square black and white TV where you have to change the channels like click clunk, click clunk, click clunk, and you're just changing to the old, and you're just in your rocking chair with your rum and Coke.
Yep.
Spitting into a can for some reason.
Sean doesn't smoke, but for some reason it smells like cigarettes.
Or cigars.
At least a cigar. Yeah. Give me some credit.
By the way, can we just please? I mean, I know this is not news, but Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is an absolute masterpiece. It's one of the funniest movies of all time.
Yes.
It's perfect. Like when they cut to the shivering. And the different shivering.
That might be a dog. Is that a dog reaction that Sean actually likes?
Yes, without a doubt, that is. That movie has one of the funniest lines ever written is when they're driving on the wrong side of the road on the highway, and the people roll down their window and say, "You're going the wrong way." And John Candy looks at Steve Martin and goes, "How do they know where we're going?" It's such a great reaction.
I think that and Blues Brothers are like two of the greatest comedies of all time.
Yeah.
Sean, just by nature of the crazy lives that we lead, this is a legitimate question. Did you ever meet John Candy?
No, I never did. I never got a chance to.
I remember the day he passed away.
I did Steve Martin. I know I interviewed Steve Martin, and I forget for which movie. It was a while ago.
I got Steve Martin. It was probably for the same movie you did. It was
the Bird movie?
Yeah, it was him, Jack Black, and Owen Wilson all together.
Yes, I was at that.
It was the heck was the name of that movie?
The Big
Three Amigos. Three Amigos? No.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's a great movie, though.
It's a terrific movie. Yeah.
Who's that? Chevy Chase.
Steve Martin Short.
Martin Short. And Steve Martin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Go revisit that one if you haven't seen that in a really long time. All right, listen, we're putting off the inevitable. We have a classic conversation. Someone put up on social media recently that the show has been on a bit of a run. And I can't deny that because we've had some incredible guests come on by, starting with Denis, leading into Hans Zimmer, leading into the Reitmans. And so, we joke that, who's going to come by next sort of thing. And this one is pretty special. This is Sir Ridley Scott, director of too many classic films to mention before we get to this. And this is for House of Gucci, but we get into a little bit of Last Duel. We talk a bit about just the film industry in general. So without further ado, Sir Ridley Scott on the Roblin Podcast.
Buckle up.
I was interviewing Adam Driver the other day, and one of the things I asked him was about the difference between performing in a film or versus on stage, because he did an amazing Broadway show called Burn This, and he said, to be honest with you, working with Ridley was interesting because he runs 4 to 6 cameras at once, so you kind of don't know where the frame is or where the camera is, so it kind of plays like a play. Can you talk about how you and Walski design or set up how you're going to position the 4 to 6 cameras, and then how you ultimately know what the shot's going to be? Do you know then?
Well, there's 2 things. I was a great operator. I personally probably did 2,500 commercials, and major commercials such as Steve Jobs' announcement for his Apple computer. That was me. But I operate on that. That's 1984. So then I get a movie to do. Well, I did a movie before that. The Duelist. I was the only operator. And then Alien. I'm the operator. I'm carrying a 65-pound pig running down the corridor, pursuing fucking Sigourney Weaver, who thinks she's like an athlete, and I'm trying to keep up with that. So, I know lenses inside out, but also because my background as a designer, and I'm a good designer, I actually would have been a pretty good architect. And so I adore design, and therefore I can foresee the geometry that will be in each scene from a camera operator's point of view, and the fact as a designer, the set point of view. But more even importantly, I got a quickie at BBC in London before I decided to go on the route of commercial advertising, where I was doing 6 camera live plays, live.
Oh, wow.
So I was seeing the movement of the camera, so I was seeing the geometry. You better plan it before you get there, because you're live and you can fuck up.
Very true. Yeah.
Wow.
And so building on that briefly, Mr. Driver told me that the sex scene between he and Lady Gaga in the trailer, the Office trailer early on in the film,
that's a good one.
He thought that was the only time that you actually went handheld. And I wanted to see if that was true. And if it was, why you did in that moment.
Well, I did. The Alien is entirely handheld. And even I would keep the camera moving like this when they're talking, because when you get a camera movement, it makes people uneasy.
Yeah.
And Alien was, I was applying all the old rule book, but fuck me, it worked. So I was actually easing like this all the time. And the editor said, you kept moving. I said, I'm doing it deliberately, wanker. So that was that. But in the sex scene, I didn't plan it to run so long. I think it's quite a long time. But what I suddenly saw in the scene, because these two are fearless and formidable, I suddenly saw it's funny. And so that's why we put in Puccini's opera over it, because she said to me at the beginning, what do you want this to be? I said, I want you to fuck him like a man. She said, okay.
She did.
But then going from that to you glide across the church music without knowing it's George Michael incoming.
Right. So
yes. That's a great moment where you're going from the serious sex that will definitely bond the marriage to church. And oh my God, as you come to Adam, you've got George Michael clicking in. You got to have faith. So I think when I use music, I shoot the scene with music in mind, certainly. This kind of movie, you shoot it with needle drops. And the great thing about George Michael is a fucking brilliant producer and songwriter. And so I thought that was a great marriage of opera, light opera with, I think the opera is quite a light opera, to George Michael's A Perfect Union, including Sex on the Desk.
Yes.
Such a great scene.
Love it. I'm going to make quite a bit of a leap, and I want to talk about the costume design in this film, because, you know, your costume design in all of your films have been so influential, from Alien to Blade Runner to Gladiator, obviously with this film. Just thinking about your career, your filmography, I'm curious just what costume design does for you as a storyteller.
Well, whatever you're doing, whether you're doing Kingdom of Heaven, which is 12th century, or doing Gucci or doing Blade Runner, it's got a smell of the period. Everything has to smell of the period. And so I tend to climb right into everything. I think I said to previously that they said, which filmmakers do you impress you? And I said, well, I have to go all the way back to Orson Welles, to when you think he did that film, I think he was 19 or 20. I mean, it's shocking. But then even his evolution to the Magnificent Ambersons, and then he became the biggest problem in his life was himself, because he had a real battle of commerce against art, because he was quite seriously an artist. Okay, so I wanted to be like that, but I didn't want to actually create what he created for himself with Hollywood. That's a negative. That just doesn't work. There's so much today. Films cost so much money that you're in partnership with the investor, the studio, and you have to be. You ought to be, and you should listen to what they got to say. So, did that answer the question, or did I deviate?
No, I'm just sort of, just
we think Yates is brilliant. Yeah. Oh, well, Mr. Scott, one of the things I find really interesting is this. So we've been doing this podcast now for about 4 years, and we've been lucky enough to have amazing filmmakers like yourself on the show. And one of the filmmakers that's been on the show a few times now is Tarantino. And one of the things that he's always said, and obviously this has been in the news everywhere, is that he wants to retire after 10 films. And this idea...
Bullshit.
Yeah. Well, that's my question. So my and the idea being that the older you get, maybe the lesser quality, and then, but respectfully, You're 83 years old and you made two of the best films I've seen this year with The Last Duel and this. And we were looking at your filmography and this, we were counting the movies. If you had stopped at 10, it would have been G.I. Jane. And I believe your 11th was Gladiator. So I'm just interested to know your thoughts on Tarantino's thoughts, because I understand where he's coming from. I get it, because I've seen filmmakers like fall off later on in life. But I mean, you are an example of someone who has continued to be amazing. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've done 19 films since Gladiator. So these are the last two. I'm already knee deep right now with Joaquin doing his makeup and his hair and his wardrobe for Napoleon. And I'll start with Jodie next. Jodie Comer is going to be Josephine. As long as you have, I think one thing is tricky. When you're a writer-director, which Tarantino is, it's oddly enough harder work, because you have to think of the material. What am I going to do? Am I really want to spend 10 months writing a screenplay, then get another 10 months getting it going? My answer to that is definitely not for me. I need, and because I can now pretty well get more or less, certainly a good writer to help me with an idea that I've got, or a thing, or a book that I've got. And so that goes hand in hand with, I need to work. I can't sit for 18 months as a gap between two movies. I tend to have no gap. As I'm posting on one, I'm already prepping on the next.
Wow.
Well, if you know actually what you're doing, it's not that difficult.
I mean, for most people, it would be. I mean, you are making, like, you're on a master level, my friend. I mean,
you've got to embrace stress. You have to embrace stress. You got to put stress in its place and don't stew.
Makes sense.
Well, I'm glad you made Gladiator, because I still have my ticket from when I saw it as a kid. So I just want to say thank you. I'm glad you didn't stop at 10. Thank you for not stopping at 10.
So I look at the character of Paolo Gucci, and I don't see Jared Leto at all. And so I wanted to get your take on, when you're casting a character, especially a character who's based on somebody who exists in real life, finding an actor who looks like the person versus turning it over to an incredibly handsome actor and telling them they have to wear prosthetics and makeup to make the character work.
Well, he chased me.
Okay.
He said, "Hey, I know you're going to do this, and I know it's going to be interesting. I want to do one of two parts. Of course, I want to play Paolo Gucci, but I think you probably already got that." He said, "My alternative would be Maurizio." He said, "But I know you probably cast that. What I want to do is play Paolo." And I went, and then I thought, why not? Because he's at his best when he likes to hide behind some makeup. And I think he finds the character, finds the universe of what he's playing within how they will look. So he can look at himself in the mirror and say, I am this person. And he literally evolves and buries himself in that character.
Dallas Buyers Club, sure.
He's not a pain in the ass on the day where the methodology is getting in the way or getting between us at all. He is an inordinately smashing guy, great guy, but will resolutely turn up at 4:00 in the morning, get the makeup on, be ready at 9.
Oh, fantastic!
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Because you've directed so many classics, just about every year is the anniversary of something. I know last year was the 20th anniversary of Gladiator. This year's the 30th of Thelma and Louise. Next year's the 40th of Blade Runner. I'm sort of curious, as a filmmaker, do anniversaries ever give you a moment to pause and reflect on a movie, or do they just happen far too often for you to care much about them?
No, you know what's interesting? Now, with the super high quality of the platforms, I was pretty well beaten up on for The Duelist and Blade Runner, and by the critics. And The Duelist was said, it's too beautiful, it's too pretty. What are two Americans playing the czars for? da 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 da, da, and I got a prize at Cannes for it. And the studio made 7 prints here. And so I said to my producer then, David Putnam, I said, "Was that normal?" He said, "No, it's not normal. They clearly don't want to really have much to do with it." Today, I can click on, the other day, out of curiosity, I clicked on and I watched The Duelists on a platform, I think Netflix. Fuck me, it looks better than when I shot it. It is spectacular. And it's now classed as a 5-star masterpiece. Thing. What the fuck happened, right? And then Pauline Kael crucified me for Blade Runner in a 4-page article for the New Yorker, which is a pretty classy piece of media. And I was so shocked that it was so personal. She killed me in 4 pages. So what I did is I framed the 4 pages. It's been in my office ever since as a reminder, the only person that matters when you walk away from a movie as to who thinks what about it is you.
Oh, yes. That's right.
Wow. Mr. Scott, one of the things that I found interesting in this film was, and then correct me if I'm wrong, there's 3 moments where you go to black and white. One of them in particular is when they leave the church after the wedding. Another one's later on where Adam's in a photo shoot. And I was curious about the intention as a filmmaker to go black and white in those moments, what you meant to do as a director, because I thought it was an immersion thing for me. It brought me in, but I'm wondering where your head was at in terms of that.
Well, one of my favorite photographers who changed gear. I want to be a fashion photographer when I left the Royal College. So I had a very good portfolio of good stuff. I've got a good eye. And they were all big black and white 2016, which I just loved going to the darkroom and printing and doing my thing. The great photographer shortly following my arrival in New York, then be 1963, 62, 63, would be William Klein. William Klein, look him up. You obviously don't know who that is. William Klein was all black and white, probably on a small Leica and probably a Raleigh, but it would be the same time as, there's some grace at that moment as well. There's Henry Wolf, but Klein for me, he did a book on New York, he did a book on Tokyo and a book on Rome, and they all became relevant. So I kind of used them as cross-reference for Janty and I for wardrobe and how people looked.
Oh, so so you go into those moments specifically because of that reason.
Yeah, he did beautiful women in kind of marvelous couturier dresses walking down the meat market in 1961 with guys carrying sides of beef. It was that street and gnarly. He brought fashion onto the street, which I thought was brilliant.
That's really smart.
Cool.
You hear a lot of rumors and casting and different things, and I thought I'd read, and I wasn't sure how accurate this was. Was Robert De Niro almost part of Gucci?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Bob, and I know I've met him, of course, but I never worked with him, and I would have liked Bobby to have done something. But hey, how badly off can you be with Al Pacino?
No, you're doing just fine with Pacino, especially because I saw so many parallels to Michael Corleone in Maurizio's story coming up.
Yeah.
But the reason I ask is because you have 2 of the best ensembles back to back between Last Duel and House of Gucci, and I honestly believe that if House of Gucci doesn't win the SAG award, it's ridiculous because everybody's firing on all cylinders. But I wanted to know if you've seen the idea or the impact of a movie star change from the days when you were working with, Russell Crowe and going back to Harrison Ford to nowadays where you have so many different stars populating an ensemble in order to lure people out to the theaters.
I think it's to make.
Yeah.
Because, the thing about having to do a movie that's going to rely totally on visual effects, it's really boring because you got to turn up every day. You got to be there and you got to stand against a blue screen and act your heart out with somebody saying, the aliens are coming. Shit like that. I don't know how I couldn't do it, even for money. I've turned down some big fees to persuade me to do something. And I guess that's why I'm still here. I cannot do it. I have to be passionate about what I'm going to do. I can't ever turn up to do the job. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's a danger in the best ones doing that. I just hope they're making a lot of money.
Yeah, very true.
Wow.
And do they really need more?
Yeah, true.
You are probably, I have to say, the only director who honestly makes me perk up whenever I hear the words director's cut, because they're legitimate. Yeah. They're your vision. They're not some studio excuse to re-release a film. I'm sort of curious, are there going to be director's cuts for either Gucci or Last Duel?
And the last time a director's cut for me was really relevant would be Kingdom of Heaven, because
a masterpiece.
Yeah, well, because I was actually I was so weary by the time I finished. A big bastard, and I had to go through the agony and the ecstasy of the previews and everyone having their opinion about the Crusades and the infidels that we were, and the bad guys that the Arab community was. And of course, it wasn't that way at all. It was in reverse. What we did to the Arab community was unforgivable. So and I think they've never forgotten that, frankly. That's still part of their DNA. But yeah, sorry, I drift off. What was your question?
Whether there are going to be director's cuts of Gucci or The Last Duel.
Yeah, the big thing historically, because it was historically pretty accurate, a very good writer called Bill Monahan, who's a good journalist. Mm-hmm. And we evolved this into what I always want to do, a crusade thing. And he said, the idea that, we bring what we think is the truth to the general audience is great. But there's an interesting piece of history in here, because the prince, the Catholic, I hope it's Catholic prince of Jerusalem has leprosy. And so he has to wear a mask because he was not look honorable from about the age of 18. And so wore this mask, the silver mask. That was Ed Norton. Mm-hmm. And his sister was Evergreen. Mm. And his sister had a child. And they noticed one day that the child felt no pain when they found the child playing with a candle. And he had his hand over the candle, and there was soot in his hand, and he didn't feel it, which can be the first signs of leprosy, which affects the nervous system. Mm. So she, rather than her young child going through what she's seen her brother go through, she euthanized him. And that whole sidetrack, seeing the boys, seeing how important he was to her deciding what she must do, took about 17 minutes. And to my regret, I removed the 17 minutes because people are saying the film's long, why do you need this part? And how wrong they were. You can watch that version, which is available.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we all have it.
Okay, good. Yeah. And Eva was so special. She was so great.
But to Jake's question, or do you have a Last Duel or Gucci director's cut at all, or are those the final?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, what goes up tends to be the film. And I'm pretty responsible. I know I'm not going to say it's got to be 4 hours like a moron. There's already 2.5 plus, which is long. But I think I'm very aware of where what you've got is the bum ache factor. You've got to watch that audiences aren't getting, oh, geez, this is too long. Mm-hmm. So I'm aware of that as well. Mm-hmm. So, but I think things do play better at home because you can pause it, get a beer, and come back. So I will probably do a director's cut, yeah, and not a long cut, yeah. Wow. But it won't be a director's cut; it'll be a long cut.
Okay,
fair enough.
So, Mr. Scott, one of the things I find interesting is, and we're going back to the conversation about you making films, multiple films at once. You basically made Last Duel and Gucci within the same year, basically. I mean, it is incredible how you did this. And for our audience who doesn't maybe know the inner workings of like the actual business, can you give us a timeline because you have the same DP, Wolski, you have Yates doing the costume design on both, you have the amazing Gregson Williams doing the score on both. I mean, it's incredible, all the things you have together. But when did one start? Did you finish one or go back and do another one? What was the timeline for Gucci and Duel?
Well, Matt Damon called me up saying, hey, and we did Martian, so I hadn't really talked to him since Martian.
Amazing
and he
movie.
said, you've done a film called The Duel once. We've got another Duel, but it's going to be quite different. But it is a period which is earlier than the period of your Duel. Would you consider that a choice? With you guys, with you and Ben, of course. So he said, well, we have the book. The book's a very slender book, but a very well itemized, chronicled version, translation direct from the trial documents. And then the writer managed to organically adjust and tell the story of what actually happened with all its outrages. So I think I had a script in 6 weeks. And then they brought in Nicole Hoffenheim, the upset heifer, I can't pronounce her name, to come in and certainly adjust and add to the female point of view. So I had a shooting script. I was shooting, I think, within about 15 weeks. Well, the shoot itself wasn't grotesquely long. I think it was about 64 days, which I know people take 90 to 120, but we don't do that. And then I had to shoot it, and I thought, I know France well, and so ironically, I ended up less than a kilometer from where I first the cavalry charge duel on The Duelist.
Oh.
And so I was shooting at less than a kilometer. It's like really weird. Like 30 odd years later, I'm standing in the same, and I can see the fucking field. So, and so we did 5-6 weeks there. Now we're coming to the end of the schedule, and there's this monster evolving called COVID. And we are running the film like an army. And even then we are doing masks, and there was no invention of injections at that point. That was just prior to what's safe to get, right? And so we were running it by definition of being supremely cautious, and got through that to 6 weeks in. And then I had to do a natural financial break to then do the rest of it in Ireland for tax rebate reasons. Ireland gives a tax rebate, and France's tax rebate is virtually minimal. So I said, why don't we break? So we broke for 2 months. In the 2 months, I edited The Last Duel to where we got to. But also in that time, I started to overlap on the script that had come in for the next one. So I was thinking, this is going to be good. So I overlap on my downtime, seeing the edits, but also preparing and thinking about the last Gucci. That's how it happened.
Wow. Unbelievable.
So the only thing you got to watch is your publicity, like now, can tangle up with your prep. So I'm right in prep on Napoleon right now. So we worked it out.
We appreciate you taking the time to work it out.
Yeah.
I want to jump back briefly to something that you were saying about how certain movies play better at home. You can pause them. You can go get a beer. I don't know if you're being cute about that, because you have had 2 films that have been able to avoid the streaming conversation. Both of your films went right to theaters. But you also talked about how you were able to watch Duelist and it looked amazing on streaming. How do you feel about potentially having one of your first movies maybe going to streaming?
The bigger the films get, the bigger the screens get for domestic access. Because I think it's good if you can watch a screen not less than 6 feet across, if you can. I mean, a 6-foot screen today costs what? 600,000 or something? $600. A lot of people can afford the $600, particularly when once you have that, your entertainment is so cheap, it's frankly nearly free. If you moan about paying, was it $7 a month, take a hike, right? It's cheaper than water, you fucking tight bastard. So like, give me a fucking break. Are you kidding me? So, to buy a license for television, buy a fucking license, shut the fuck up, But so yeah, I mean, I think it's coming. And I think the theaters are going to have to do major facelifts and cleanups, and also the price of taking the family to a theater. You know, you had a couple of bags of popcorn, some Pepsi for the evening for the average person. It can be $200.
Sure, right, exactly.
And it's that don't fly.
Yeah.
And I understand why.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah. Mr. Scott, we're going to cut you loose on this one because I think we're running out of time. But, the entire Gucci family, the whole movie, they're so worried about their legacy and what their name means. I was wondering, as a director who's building a filmography, when people see the name Ridley Scott, it means something to them. If at any point in your career you started thinking about that, what the name Ridley Scott means and sort of the legacy of your own filmography.
I try not to be tacky. I try to be honest as I can be. We did tackle it with a great deal of respect because, a lot of the family are certainly very much around. Patricia Gucci has actually just been out of prison now for about 3 years. But the film, the event was so publicized with many books, many articles, that frankly, it became public domain. Mm-hmm. So we felt less worried about, I felt less worried about tackling such a satire. To me, I see it as a bit of a satire because there's so much, do I say bad behavior? There's so much suspect behavior within the evolution of the story that brought about the disaster. And the disaster was tragic. There's no question about that. And she did pay for killers. Mm-hmm. And as Aldo did dodge tax evasion on a big level. So in a funny kind of way, I saw it as a parallel to the Medicis or the Borgias. There's a kind of 21st century story here of a 15th century family that self-destructs. I thought that was interesting.
Very much so.
Wow.
Mr. Scott, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us. We can't wait for people to get a chance to see this film. And of course, go out and see Last Duel if they hadn't had a chance to see it yet. So thank you so much. Continued success.
Thank you, man.
We want to thank Sir Ridley Scott for stopping by the show and being a guest. Still can't quite believe that we can say Ridley Scott joined the show. And especially in a year where he delivered not one, but two truly excellent films within the course of a couple of months at the age of 83. Ridley, we talk a lot about filmmakers that we would love to have on the show and that would be good fits. Ridley never crossed my mind. So the idea that happened is pretty amazing to me, and I would assume amazing to each of you as well.
I have a question for you guys though. What was it like to ask questions that he answered?
Yeah, all right. So if people want to go back and re-listen, you have to pay attention to the fact that
it just must have been great.
I did try and help you, by the way.
You did, and I appreciate you for it.
I was like, please answer Jake's question.
When I listened back to it this time, I specifically listened to it to see, did he really answer any of our questions kind of thing? And he does. Kevin and I, he went right to the answers for the things we asked. Jake, not so much.
Honestly, were my questions, and be honest with me, this is a show where, were they poorly worded?
No,
did they not make sense? Did they,
I didn't think so.
Dude, you asked a straight up normal question. Are there director's cuts of Last Duel and House of Gucci?
Yeah.
And then again, this is not we love Sir Ridley Scott. This is not a negative thing, but it was just funny because I had to be like, can you answer Jake's question real quick?
I think he suffers a little bit from he has so much material.
Yeah.
So when Kevin asked a question of just how do you set up all your cameras? He went back to shooting commercials. He was like, well, let me tell you why. The Steve Jobs commercial where he announces the first computer, I shot that.
That was me.
So,
oh my God. I was like,
so he has to start there and then build. So, and then he just gets lost. He got lost rambling in a few of his answers because he has so much information.
Let me tell you, that was he's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. Yeah. And as we talk about in the interview, juggling two massive productions in 1 year, both very good films, And at the same time, like, it is an astounding thing. Like, for him to casually drop that I was chasing Sigourney Weaver down the hallway in Alien with a 60-pound rig or whatever. I mean, like, those little lines, like, those are the ones that, like, made me, like, geek out. Like, it was just so casual. Like, dude, you're mentioning, like, probably one of the most iconic films in the history, or is one of the most iconic films of all time.
Also, he doesn't do a lot of press. You know, where do you see him doing press? Honestly. So,
I mean,
I think we were very lucky to have him.
Especially since Kevin and I are millennials, and apparently we're the reason that Last Duel won.
But wait, I'm not a millennial?
But his genre, his genre crossing is brilliant, though. Like, there are not many filmmakers who can cross genres like he can, and it's pretty amazing. And props to Sean, because the Tarantino question was originally just going to be about, the idea of retiring after 10 films. And Sean was the one who found out that Gladiator, because Sean counted him, he goes, that would have been his 11th. I mean, that's crazy. And then what did he say? He said he's made 19 films since Gladiator.
Since then, yes.
It's just unbelievable to me. Unbelievable. That was a really special interview. So,
all right, let's get to Hawkeye season 1, new Disney Plus show, new Marvel show, Jeremy Renner, Haley Steinfeld. It is coming out. But by the time you're listening to this, you can go over to Disney Plus and you can watch the first 2 episodes. There are 6 total in the season, and we'll get into this in greater detail when the whole season is played out, because this, I feel like, is a difficult situation. In, like, it's almost as if you were reviewing a movie having only seen the first quarter of it necessarily. But Jake, we can talk about, like, the tone of it and what we think about the approach of it so far. And
I don't like it.
You do like it?
I don't like it.
Oh, you don't like it? Listen, I'm probably closer to you than I would be with most normal Marvel stuff, where I kind of just devour it and I think it's fantastic. I thought it was slow. And I thought it felt a little cheap. Like, I thought it felt like I described it to you as like an ABC, Marvel show, like an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that. And
the trailers look like that.
Yeah.
And so that's what it comes across as. And especially episode 2 to me was slower and more dull than episode 1.
And he's in episode 2 more. Like, episode 1 is kind of a Haley Steinfeld focused.
It's a lot of Kate Bishop. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of Kate Bishop. Yeah. And there is I did end up watching episode 2, and there's a giant chunk, and you and I were sort of, I don't know if you were complaining about this, I would complain about this. There's a giant chunk where Hawkeye has to enter a live action role playing tournament, LARP, if you're familiar with that. And it just, like, kind of diminishes the epic hero-ness of this character and the journey that this guy has gone on, to the point where, like, we've seen him broken and beaten as Ronin in Endgame. Like, I feel like they've gotten him to a fairly interesting place.
Yep.
For a character that can kind of pale in comparison to his co-stars. But then to see him almost, like, reduced to a joke, live action role playing in Central Park, just sort of, it made me feel like, what are we doing here?
And there's a possibility that you can do that material and have it be funny, but that scene is not funny.
It's not.
It really just hangs there.
Yeah.
Like,
is it meant to be that, like, oh, he's much better than these random ass teenagers who are like, of course he would be better at fighting than these like, that's not like funny or surprising in any way. Like, I would hope he's an Avenger. I would hope he would be better than these kids who are with, styrofoam swords and stuff in Central Park. No, it didn't. Whenever I finished the first one, I never had that urge of, like, God, I wish they'd just sent me the whole season. Like, when, all the other ones, when they sent us Loki, the first 2 of Loki, I was like, oh my God, like, I'm so ready for the next ones. And this sounds sort of like, I'll get around to it. Now,
I'll say this. I do think Kate Bishop is an interesting character, and I do think Haley Steinfeld is well cast in that character. And so this is why I'm afraid to sort of kick this, as hard as we are, kind of, because if it picks up steam, if it turns out that these first 2 episodes were just laying the groundwork for a lot of stuff that's going to be significant later, then we'll come back around and maybe, but I will say the pacing of these 2 is not great. So Yeah.
Sean, I have just a random question for you. Is there a place where like you would give your thoughts about the episodes after they come
Jake,
out?
That's a terrific question.
I want to know that too. That's okay.
Sure, of course, totally Kevin. Organic. I'm glad that. Thank you for asking. There's a website.
One question at a time at the press conference, please.
I'm sorry, Kevin from Fox 5 DC.
Kevin 5, yes, please. And no follow-ups, please. No follow-ups, please. We want to get to as many people as we can. There's a website on the internet called YouTube, and Cinema Blend has a channel there, and on that channel, following each episode, I will have a recap and my analysis. I've done them for the Disney Plus shows up to this point. I will continue to do them for Hawkeye. We did a beast of one that is the first 2 episodes combined, and that should be available right now too.
You should do that for Game of Thrones.
Well, I did do that for Game of Thrones.
You should do all of Game of Thrones in like 6 weeks.
I did that. Yes, I also
that's
did
what we did.
I also did that, and it was
your poor editors.
Horrible. It was horrible.
I got this because of that. No one can see it.
Oh, an editor is no one. We want to run through some of the quick reviews and reactions to things that are opening this week that you guys can check out because it's a lot. Jakey, you saw Halle Berry's boxing film Bruised. That's their directorial debut, I believe?
It's her directorial debut. Look, in terms of like the realm of boxing films, it's a fairly paint by numbers. It's not really anything story-wise that you've never seen before. You can probably, once you start watching it, you can kind of probably figure out what's going to happen. That being said, I really do think that Halle Berry has picked up a lot working in front of the camera that she then took behind the camera. I thought it was very assuredly directed, confidently directed. I thought it was well made. And so I really, whenever it ended, the first thing I thought was like, oh, I really hope that this is not one and done for her. I'd love to see her get behind the camera again, maybe with maybe a little more of an unconventional story. But I really do think that she hasn't worked as long in the industry as she has and not picked up some lessons along the way. And I really,
great filmmakers.
I really was impressed by what she did behind the camera. And obviously, you know, she's fairly effortless as an actress in front of the camera. Like she dives into the role very well. Like I said, if the boxing story itself were a little bit different, other than like, oh yeah, I know the story, maybe I would be a little bit more enthusiastic. But I'm excited about her as a talent as in terms of directing, I would say.
Okay. All right. Disney, that's coming to Netflix. It's called Bruised. Encanto is a Disney musical, animated musical that's coming to theaters and Disney Plus. Is that right? Or just theaters?
I think this is the first one that's theaters only. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure this one's theaters only.
Okay. Neither of us have seen it. None of us have seen it, so we will have to move on from Encanto as Gabe looks that up, and we'll shift to Resident Evil.
Yeah, it's only in theaters.
Only in theaters. Interesting. Yep. Okay. Welcome to Raccoon City. I'll go first. I didn't love this movie because I didn't grow up on these games. And so to me, it was kind of just a standard zombie film with characters who were mildly interesting. I really like the lead actress, Kaya Scoladero. Help me out there.
I'll look it up.
Scoldario.
Stop trying. You're digging. Your shovel is no longer long enough.
She was from Crawl, and she was also in the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean film. And here she's playing a character, Crawl. Claire, who is returning back to to Raccoon City during the time of the zombie outbreak. But listening to our interview with Johannes Roberts, I found to appreciate the movie more because of the amount of work that he put into the details to create some of the locations. Gabe, how do you pronounce it?
Kaya Scodelario.
Thank you very much.
It is pronounced how it looks.
So, Jakey, I'm going to throw it to you because you did grow up on the games and really appreciated that aspect of it.
Yeah, I loved the games. Therefore, I really love the first 2 acts of this film. It's basically the first and the second game. The first game mostly is them going to this house. And then the second game, gets a little bit out. But I think it involves a police station. My biggest complaint oftentimes whenever filmmakers adapt a video game is that they decide that they want to change the story. And I go, look, if it's a good enough story to justify people wanting to turn it into a movie, just copy the story. Just like it's right there. Just copy it. Why would you change it? And as much as I actually really do like the first Resident Evil film with Mila Jovovich, like where they go into the hive, I think there's some really fun. It's a really fun movie.
The one of the most iconic scenes that I'll never forget seeing is the lasers and the guy slicing in pieces.
But, that is great, but that's not Resident Evil. Like that's not, and so it was. And it's good. It's great in its own right. I love that movie, but it's not a Resident Evil movie. So.
I have to add this here because I grew up on this movie, and we give Resident. I'm not taking credit away from Resident Evil, but that bit is directly from the 1997 film Cube. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Cube, but they do that in Cube. Sure. And I love that Resident Evil pulled that, but I wanted to give some credit to Cube, which is an underrated horror film.
He is right, but the first time I saw it was Resident Evil.
Sure. It's a brilliant, it's a crazy horror bit.
Crazy bit.
Continue.
So it was nice to see the Resident Evil that I loved and grew up with represented on the big screen and see these characters represented on the big screen. That being said, the film wildly goes off the rails, no pun intended, because there's a train sequence in the final act to the point where I just sort of went, like you're so close to sticking the landing and you just got stupid. So it ended on an unfortunate beat for me where I didn't walk out as jacked as I was by the 2/3 mark.
Right.
It really, really went off the rails for me, and it just got ridiculous. But the first 2/3, if you're a fan of the games at all, I really think you're gonna dig it.
Okay. Stay on Jake, who's the only one of us who's seen Licorice Pizza.
Yeah.
The new Paul Thomas Anderson film.
Yeah, so look, I'm just going to touch on this briefly because I really want to hear what you guys think whenever you do see it. Look, I have to be honest with you. I don't think I've loved a Paul Thomas Anderson film since around There Will Be Blood or The Master. So it's been a few films since I can honestly say that I truly loved one of his movies. This is, I think you could say, this is Paul Thomas Anderson's hangout film. In the sense that Tarantino had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that world, and with Tarantino in Hollywood, that world and those characters, I was much more interested in, with quote unquote, hanging out in than I was this world and these characters. For me, this just meanders a little bit more. I never once disliked it. I never would ever go as far as saying like I was never bored. Obviously like Paul Thomas Anderson's not going to make a bad film. Like he's an incredible filmmaker, and even for like his lesser films, which this was for me, I'm still engaged watching it. But I didn't buy. I was never as engaged. Like I didn't want to. I know a lot of people have said like, oh, I wanted that movie to go on for another 3 or 4 hours. Like everything about how I feel about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Tarantino is how I think a lot of people are feeling about Licorice Pizza, and that's great because I know how much I love Hollywood. And if that works for you, that's fantastic. Unfortunately, it just didn't work for me. I didn't want to keep existing in that world. I didn't want to keep existing with these characters. I just sort of walked out. It is definitely, for me, bottom tier Paul Thomas Anderson. But as we were sort of joking, I think I'm in the minority on that. So I really do hope people dig it more than I do.
Your description of it reminds me of Inherent Vice, which is a movie that I know you guys, both of you, don't really love. And I was enamored with it. I will always say during... we got it during screener season when we're kind of inundated with awards movies that we have to try to catch up on. And I kept popping out movies that I would give like 20 minutes to, and I'd be like, this isn't going to do anything. And then I put Inherent Vice back in and revisit it because I just wanted to spend more time in that world. And so if Licorice Pizza creates something like that.
I walked out really thinking, Sean, I honestly really think that you're going to dig Licorice Pizza.
That's interesting.
I'm excited to see it because Phantom Thread might be my favorite PTA film. So like and I know like I love Boogie Nights and Magnolia and The Master, but like Phantom Thread was it's just a masterpiece. And so like I've been loving what he's been doing later in his career. So I'm like super excited. And obviously he's a director who shoots on film, and I just always loved PTA.
I can't figure out like my favorite PTA is early PTA, like Boogie Nights and Magnolia, and obviously I love There Will Be Blood, and I really, 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 really like The Master.
Do you like Punch Drunk? Because I've heard this compared to Punch Drunk.
I love Punch Drunk Love. Okay. But I can't figure out what he's doing now that's keeping me from connecting with his movies lately. Mm-hmm. Like this is now the third or fourth movie in a row that I think I've walked out going like.
You don't like Phantom Thread?
No, I like Phantom Thread, but like I haven't felt really, if we're talking like ecstatic, over the moon, holy crap, bow down to this man kind of love since There Will Be Blood.
Okay.
See, and I don't know what he's doing for me. I don't know what he's doing that's causing that disconnect, and I wish I could put my finger on it. But
do you think this is the sort of thing? Well, how would you know? Where those films won't change, but you will, and like down the line you'll revisit.
I hope so. I really do. Yeah. And if anything, that would be fascinating, because then that dives into the whole question of, okay, well, what was it then and what is it now, kind of thing.
How many times have you seen Phantom Thread?
Twice.
The thing that worries me about Licorice Pizza is that, like, I was born in the 70s, but I didn't grow up in the 70s, and I know it has a real 70s vibe to it, so I don't know if I'm going to dial into it that much. But
I mean, we bought into the
60s for Hollywood.
For sure. And even, like, it comes out this week, too, but, like, 8-Bit Christmas on HBO Max. It's set in the 80s. Like, I wasn't born in the 80s, but I still feel like this strange connection to it. Like, I feel like I get it, So, I don't know. I think it's possible if it's done right.
All right, so let's dive into House of Gucci, which all three of us have seen, and I appear to be in the minority on it because I thought it was amazing, and I think it's sitting at about 60-something% on Rotten Tomatoes. Gabe, could you actually look up where it is while we?
It was 65% when I looked earlier today.
I don't understand that one bit, because I came out of House of Gucci and I tweeted that I thought that ensemble. I think I said should not. Now, listen, it could be challenged, but should win the SAG award, because I honestly thought every performance in it was spectacular. Gabe, did you find where it's at? 67%. That is ridiculous.
Hey, certified fresh still, right?
Is it too long? Maybe. But that's, I was wrapped up in the story. I was wrapped up in the characters. If I got to spend more time with Al Pacino and Jared Leto and whatever the hell they were doing, I was fascinated by their choices. Listen, it's big. It swings for the fences. But within there, I thought it was a really interesting story about Maurizio Gucci, played by Adam Driver, who doesn't want to be part of, he went to law school and tried to study law and get out of the fashion industry and not follow the footsteps of his family, whereas the other people who were very content to be in his family and stay in that atmosphere and sort of fight for stronger positions in the hierarchy of Gucci. I thought they were all fascinating, and it taught me, there's an element when it gets to a scene where they realize how much Gucci is being knocked off, like the cheap knockoffs. And I was like, oh God, that's right. That's a whole element of the fashion industry and handbags and shoes and things like that I never even thought about, and to a certain extent, Adam Driver's like, yeah, but our name is still on it. And Lady Gaga's like, yes, but it's on crap. Like, you shouldn't have your name on. So I was so swept up in this world, and I think it's beautifully shot. I think all the performances across the board are really great, and I would not be surprised if this movie made my top 10. If it's in the bottom half, it's going to be in the bottom half, but it's flirting with making my top 10 because I was enamored with it. Kev, where are you? I know you said it was a bit long, but.
Yeah, I think it's a very good film. I'm not in great territory, but I'm in very good territory.
Okay.
I think that the film could have been easily cut by 30 minutes. There's a section in the middle. I won't go into spoilers, but it deals with skiing. I don't think that needed to be in there. Just that's the point where I kind of started feeling the length of the movie.
Sure.
But prior to that, and then later in the third act, I was all in. For me, the performances are better than the script, and they're better than they're just outstanding. I loved Jared Leto. I mean, that performance is incredible. I spent the entire time looking for Jared Leto. I couldn't find him on screen. It was it was such a transformation, not just from the prosthetics, but just emotionally. He was Paolo Gucci, no question. Gaga's phenomenal. Driver's phenomenal. One of Pacino's best performances in years.
It's so good.
It's one of his best. Irons is awesome in the movie as well. And I think there's so much to say about it that I loved. I mean, my biggest complaint really is that it really needed to be edited down. I think that it really could have been what is it, 2 hours and 40 or 2:35 or whatever.
It's about 2:40, yeah.
And I have no problem with that. Infinity War's 2:35, and that movie flies by like that, right? And so and I'm not comparing Infinity War to House of Gucci. I just mean that runtime, it depends on the material you have in that runtime, right? So to me, all the interesting scenes were with Leto and obviously Gaga. And so to me, I was invested in learning that. Walski's cinematography is incredible. Gregson Williams' score is fantastic. Ridley is brilliant at like balancing score and soundtrack really well. And one of the cool things about it, obviously the costume design, but he did Gucci and Duel basically in the same year, essentially. And it's the same DP, same composer, same costume designer.
Yeah,
it's just like I think Adam Driver said in my interview that like the day he wrapped on Duel, he went to go look at his Gucci costumes, which is just like such an interesting thing to think about. But
so here's an interesting thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we give Ridley a lot of credit for moving fast and transitioning from project to project. Should he maybe wait a month or two and process? Like, could he have found another edit? And I mean, I'm joking because of Ridley and his multiple edits, but could he, if he stepped away from Gucci for two months and then went back to it, would he have seen some of that fluff in the middle?
I don't know. I mean, and again, it's like it's an interesting thing, and I mean, I think he, like he said in the interview, he's always working. I mean, while we were talking to him, he was probably thinking about Gladiator 2 and Napoleon, right? Like he was just like he was literally working on those films and stopped to talk to us for 30 minutes and then went back to work.
Oh, by the way, I saw Joaquin Phoenix on a carpet somewhere and I was like, what the hell happened to Joaquin Phoenix? But I realized he's prepping for Napoleon. He's heavier. He's got that awful haircut. And I was like, oh my God, is he just letting himself go?
Did you say, come on, Joaquin?
He was wearing his signature sweatshirt, the one that he wore to the Joker press day. His dress-up sweater.
But in general, it's a very good film. I do think The Last Duel is a better movie. The Last Duel, I believe, is similar length, and that movie to me never dragged. In terms of like, I just loved the way that movie moved. But I mean, I'm nitpicking here. I really, really, really thought Gucci was a very good film. I'm just not in great territory. So I think for sure recommend seeing it. Just prepare for a little bit of a lengthy middle section. I mean, Sean, I know you love the film, but do you agree that the middle section was a little lengthy? Did you feel? I felt it. Like
I think that there's motivation for it. There's a reason why it has to be in there. It's a part where Maurizio is pulling away from Patricia, and I think you have to feel her confusion by it, right? And so, did he take too long to solidify it? Yeah, probably. Could he have gotten through it faster? But because, like you, I didn't know the story going into it, I was never bored in that because I was curious about where it was going. So, yeah, I get it. Because there's another character who gets introduced in that moment. And I was kind of like, who is this now? Like, we're really late into this story. Who is this? Right. And that's what happened in real life. So I get that they had to sort of cover it that way. This is hard to do without doing spoilers. But I know exactly what you're saying. And yeah. So I get that.
And I know we'll get to Jake. It's not that I was bored. It's just you felt it.
It's almost like, and Jake, I promise I'm going to get to you in a second. But the part of the reason why I haven't done a rewatch of Last Duel is because I don't know.
Does this kind of feel like the interview, Jake?
I don't know if that.
In fairness, Jake did just review like 5 movies in a row. So
he did, yes. I don't know if the 3-act structure of Last Duel is going to keep me as engaged when I rewatch it a second time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Do I want to go back and see that story told through multiple times again?
What you just said is fascinating. I would, as much as I think Last Duel is a better movie, I would rather rewatch House of Gucci.
Fair. I think that's fair.
Duel is just too brutal. I mean, it's just too much. It's hard. It's so hard to watch. I loved it, but it's so hard to watch.
Yeah. Jake, why did you hate House of Gucci?
No, actually, I think I'm right there with you, Sean, in that I actually really loved this movie. I don't think it necessarily needed to be trimmed. I think it's fair to say that, like, maybe the middle portion is maybe less interesting than the first and third acts, but I also do agree that they're necessary. Like, you do kind of have to have that. Third act doesn't really make sense unless you have that. But no, I thought it was big. I thought it was loud. I thought it was crazy. I've often said that I'm a sucker for like scene chewy actors,
there's a lot of that.
This movie, like, if you took a scene chewy moment and made a 3-hour movie out of it, that's House of Gucci. It's like a scene chewy movie. And I every point you made, Sean, I think you and I'm sort of in that same area where like this has got a really good shot, probably not like top 5 or anything, but it's got a really good shot at making the back half of my top 10. I do also agree that Last Duel is a better film and will likely be higher on my top 10 list. I think Last Duel is guaranteed spot on my top 10 list. But if you put both of them in front of me and said you got to watch one of them right now, I'd be like, I'd rather watch House of Gucci, to be honest.
Because it's more fun.
Yeah, you know what I think the disconnect is on Gucci? I think people went into Gucci thinking that because of the story that it tells, that it's a drama. And to me, it's not. To me, it's a comedy. Like,
well, it's like, I keep seeing the word campy being used, and I feel like that's a little almost like not the right word for it. And it's I don't know. Do you think it's campy? I don't think it's campy. It's like I thought it was just like it had a fun tone to it. Like Jared Leto is hilarious. Like that character is so funny. I mean, but at the same time, it's also heartbreaking, kind of, because the guy like has his own dreams, and like there's this phenomenal scene, which I won't go into the details about, with Leto and Irons. That I think is one of the best scenes in the whole film. Like just like that scene, like, and there's so many great scenes, and like it's definitely worth seeing. It's just a little lengthy. That's all.
Expect something different. You're gonna get something different out of this.
Yeah.
Which you normally do from Ridley Scott over the course of his career, which is exactly why we decided to play Ridley Scott Blend this week in honor of the fact that we have Sir Ridley on the show. So Kev, why don't we start off with you? Where are you going with your favorite Ridley Scott film?
So this was a hard one for me because I remember we're playing favorite, not best here. So obviously the Alien and Blade Runner, those films are better than the movie that I'm about to mention. But if I'm looking at his filmography, my favorite movie he's ever done is Matchstick Men.
Oh,
Matchstick Men.
Love it.
I love Nick Cage. As somebody who has OCD, I appreciated like just the way it was portrayed in the character. I also just really thought that film found such an interesting tone. Like it was like, and Sam Rockwell, like what was one of the greatest? He's one of the greatest actors working today. I mean, I
for sure
love him so much.
God, you make me want to like turn on that movie tonight. Oh my
I'm
God,
gonna watch it tonight. I have to watch it tonight.
Kevin, what a great pick.
I gotta watch it tonight.
And so I have to give credit to my father-in-law, by the way, because Lauren's dad, like he's obsessed with that movie, and I saw it in theaters, and I love the movie, and I remember digging it. Yeah, see, Jake has the Blu-ray, and I remember loving the film, but I've revisited it now more.
The old snap cases.
Yeah,
the old clicky snap. Oh shit,
the disc fell out. But I've revisited that movie a lot more now because of Lauren's dad, and I almost forgot it was a Ridley Scott movie. To be honest with you, you can think about his collection of genres that he's been in. Sure. Like it's Matchstick Men. Like it's like that's a Ridley Scott movie.
Different.
You forget it's Ridley Scott. Full screen. Ooh,
no.
Yeah, you made a bad decision there, my friends.
I like how that's on the top, like it's a feature.
Yeah. Oh no, Jake, can you?
I'm sorry,
Jake, break that disc right now.
Yeah.
I think he just did.
Jake, I guarantee by the end of this show, Kevin will rent you an iTunes version.
Yeah, I will. No, but it's a phenomenal film, and I think I love Nicolas Cage, obviously, and it's a great role for him. And I also
where's
just love
Alison Lohman?
I know, but it's a great question. That relationship that he has with his daughter. That whole, it's awesome.
All right, so part of the reason why I didn't choose Matchstick Men is that I've only seen it the one time, and I remember adoring it, and then I just have not gone back to see it again. So I couldn't pick it, but you're right, it is phenomenal, and you have absolutely convinced me that we're watching Matchstick Men.
I kind of want to watch it tonight too. I mean, I think I saw it last time I saw it was like a year ago at my father-in-law's house, and I was just sitting there going, damn, I forgot how good this was.
Terrific choice. So instead I had to go with Blade Runner. Because it was so ahead of its time. And it plunged you into a future that so many people have copied up to this point. It's the kind of movie that only gets better as we, as we age, as society ages. Like it's astounding to me that he made that movie in 1982. Does it suffer a little bit from production values because it's the early 1980s? Yes and no. Like, it still looks like it was made well ahead of its time. I'm going to pick the final cut of it because I think that's the time he finally got back in and got it right necessarily, but it's a terrific Harrison Ford performance. It's the kind of Harrison Ford performance that makes the most out of the fact that he's a curmudgeon. You know, like, he's extremely charming, and he's without a doubt an A-list leading man, but he's also a curmudgeon. That's just part of his personality, and that's Deckard. I mean, that's exactly who he is. And so, but it also, like the best science fiction, asks a very complicated question, and then goes to really deep lengths to explore it, and keeps you guessing the entire time of, in Blade Runner's case, it's who's human and who isn't kind of thing. I could go back and rewatch Blade Runner anytime. I know it's absolutely one of his classics, but looking back over it, the other one I might have gone with is The Martian. The Martian is a little bit too much of a crowd pleaser, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Oh. And so I went with Blade Runner. So Jakey, where'd you
wait,
go?
I have a question. Is this I don't know if this is gonna upset people. As much as I love Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, I actually prefer 2049.
I don't think that's
is that bad to say? I mean,
no, I think they're different films.
But I would rather pop on 2049 than.
That's interesting.
I think 2049 to Blade Runner is what Dr. Sleep is to The Shining. Is that they're necessary?
Okay.
Is.
But I don't know. As much as I love Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, no question, it's a masterpiece and a phenomenal film. I just enjoy. I think. What Daenerys doesn't agree with me at all. She's like, Kevin, what the hell are you talking about? But Denis did a hell of a job in 2049.
Oh, he did. So. Yeah, he did. He definitely did. So
yeah.
All right, Jakey, where are you at?
I went with Alien. Okay. I think I've probably watched Alien at least twice a year, maybe since I was 8 years old. I think it's probably one of that, Jaws and Jurassic Park are probably the movies I've seen the most in my lifetime. Maybe Empire Strikes Back. I think it's such a beautiful, airtight script of one horror domino knocking over another horror domino. This idea of, we're getting a distress call. We get the distress call, and wait, there's a ship, and we go into the ship, and there's some eggs, and the eggs, I think the Xenomorph is quite possibly the most perfectly and beautifully constructed monster in movie history.
Wow.
The idea of, it sounds so simple and like, of course, these days, but the idea of you have a monster on a ship in space with acid blood, which removes your ability to shoot it, because if it bleeds, it burns a hole in your hull, and you all die. Like, that's beautiful, perfect, airtight screenwriting. It takes a page out of the book of Jaws in that you don't really see the Xenomorph in its entirety into the end. Some of the quick shots of it leading up to those moments are brilliant. I love that Ripley is almost a secondary character throughout most of it, and if you don't know any better, and you don't know who that character is, and you don't know who Sigourney Weaver is, you're almost kind of surprised that she ends up being the final girl. It's just, everything about that film is just pitch perfect. Like, every moment, there's not an ounce of fat on it. I still think it's absolutely terrifying. I think it's it's actual genuine horror. And then the chest burster sequence is one of the most incredible sequences ever put to film.
Iconic.
Can I hot take part 2 real quick?
You like Aliens more?
Most people do.
So again,
just action horror.
Yeah. Obsessed with Ridley Scott's Alien, masterpiece, no question. But I'd rather watch Cameron's film.
That's fine. Yeah,
okay.
I understand that.
I really think, and this is going to be a hot take. Okay. And I love
this is
a
hot Jake.
This is a hot Jake. I really think
is there any other
hot Jake? Like, give your hot Jake. Go.
Or wait, is that your OnlyFans? I forget.
And that's just people actually responding to questions that I ask. I think the first half of James Cameron's Aliens is kind of slow. It's a slow burn.
Bill Paxton, though, man, you can't get past.
I'm not knocking it, but I'm engaged the entirety of Alien, as opposed to Aliens. I'm sort of like, all right, let's get this shit going.
I love them both. But
I love them both.
I prefer. Sean, where are you?
That's really, they're razor thin separated, but I would probably go Alien. Although I'm gonna say that the story behind the whiteboard and Aliens is the greatest Hollywood story ever told. So
what you guys are forgetting though is all of that pales in comparison to just watching the behind the scenes of Alien 3, where David Fincher just curses at the studio the whole time. That's more exciting than the first two Alien movies.
It's Alien 3 on a chalkboard, him just like scribbling through it aggressively.
Do you ever think about like I always think about things like this, like Fincher, like that could have ruined his career, right?
Sure.
And like, and the
he's
fact
too good.
that
he's too good.
He's undeniable. He's brilliant. But the fact that he survived, I mean, that's a gigantic thing to bomb, right? You know what I mean? And like to follow up Alien and Aliens, and like obviously. So wait, had Fincher done The Game already at that point?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I thought The Game was after 7.
Oh, okay. So just imagine, like, for a second, like if the Alien 3 thing like ruined his career.
Yeah,
we would not have The Game, 7,
Social
Fight Club,
Network.
Social Network. I mean, I just
Benjamin
think to myself,
Button.
like, thank God somebody like gave him another shot, because because I also think that most people know it wasn't his fault.
Oh yeah, I think so.
And I think that was like publicly, like that was well known, but
Kevin,
still,
we wouldn't have Mank.
Yeah, we wouldn't have Mank.
But before Alien 3, he had like a decade of making some of the highest profile videos. And he was working with, I forget the name of that studio that he was a part of with, it was like him, I'm going to botch the story.
Soderbergh in that?
Was a bunch of guys. I can't remember what it's called, but I want to say it was like him and it might have been Soderbergh. I believe it had Michael Bay. It was like, they were like this ragtag group of these like young hot directors that had all just decided to make their own things. Huh. So I think like I said, he had like a decade of like well-established work. He had just never done a feature before. And it was he was very public about how the movie was not his.
Yeah.
So
all right, audience picks for Ridley Scott blend. We went Michelle Garrist and Harry Lichtman both chose Gladiator, a movie that I thought would get some representation amongst the three of us. Ray Perkin went with Alien. Michael Breen said Thelma and Louise. Rachel Ho says this apathetic millennial is a big Black Hawk Down fan. I hope that apathetic millennial thing sticks to Ridley for a little while, because it's pretty funny, especially after our interview with him, because he just doesn't care. Dave Hammer and Cam McKinney said The Martian. Christian Williams, AM, and many more said Blade Runner. Kyle Arking said Legend, and Claudius said Black Rain. So a lot of love across Ridley's entire filmography.
Is Black Rain Christian Slater?
No, it's
That's Hard Rain.
It's Hard Rain. Hard Rain.
We just want the money.
That's right.
Black Rain is Michael Douglas in his prime when he was going through late 80s, early 1990s. This next one, I won't be able to do. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to.
Are we just going to bounce out?
I'm gonna abstain because I literally cannot choose for next week.
Larry Crown blend.
So you guys can play hashtag Keira Knightley blend and let us know your pick via email.
That's easy.
You think so?
Yeah.
She's been in some great stuff.
I got mine.
I adore everything.
I think I know mine,
does.
and I don't even do these usually.
I know mine right off the top of my head.
Okay.
Literally.
Well,
tune in next week.
Hashtag Keira Knightley blend, or you can email us at realblend@cinemablend.com, and that is where you can write a review. And we have a review this week that came in from Jacob Beck, who emailed us at realblend and said, "Hi, boys. I hope you're all well. This is a review, but I also want to say thank you. I discovered the podcast through Kevin and Jake's interviews and have loved every single episode. A lot of people find us through Jake and Kevin's interviews, by the way. So thank you guys for posting on YouTube. I have always loved movies and loved talking about movies with my friends, and that is exactly what your show feels like, talking about movies with friends. I love how passionate Sean is about superhero movies and have just started reading your book, and I'm loving it so far. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Jacob.
You wrote a book?
I did. Yes, I did. I have always I love the Jake.
Glad we don't have to hear about that again.
I've always enjoyed nice shots and how movies are filmed, but you have given me a brand new understanding on how movies are truly filmed and made, and am now very interested in movies shot on film and IMAX and the aspect ratios of movies.
That makes me so happy.
Jake, I love your grounded takes on movies and mostly find myself siding with you in regards to opinions on movies. Also, Gabe, I really like to hear your opinion on movies, and I think you do a great job behind the scenes. I recommend the show every chance that I get, and I always get excited about new episodes. My favorite episodes have been Everyone with Tarantino, Damien Chazelle, and more recently, your episode with Denis Villeneuve. Dune isn't out here in Australia, but I still love the episode, and I'm thinking of getting on a plane and flying across 2 states so I can see it in IMAX. Wow. God love this, man. This is fantastic.
Hell yeah. And like Denis spent the first 10 minutes of our interview geeking out about IMAX. That's awesome.
He certainly did.
Yeah.
Jacob goes on to say, I also want to say thank you. A lot of listeners have shared their struggle with mental health, and I want to share mine too. I have severe anxiety, and going to the movies has always been something I can do that calms me down and makes me feel less anxious. And I can now say that listening to your podcast helps me out too. Just listening to you guys is like therapy, and your friendly banter and compassion for each other is what makes this podcast so special and relaxing to listen to. So thank you. Sorry that this email is long, but there is something else I wanted to share. Earlier this year, I was invited to a premiere of an Australian-made movie called Occupation Rainfall. The movie was fine, but it was one of the best nights of my life. After the movie, the cast and crew stayed back and gave the opportunity to ask questions. I asked the director about some of the shots that were used and his thoughts on digital versus film. The lead actress did her own stunts, and we got onto Tarantino's masterpiece Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and discussed how great it was, how he portrayed stuntmen. I'm telling you this to say how I never would have had the confidence to talk to these people if it wasn't for your show. And then he attached some photos from himself standing with the director and some of the cast that we got to enjoy. So he says, so thank you again, boys. Never stop what you are doing. Your show is truly a blessing. From Jacob, who I'm going to assume is in Australia. So Jacob, that is incredible.
Wow.
I mean, boys, what does that mean when you hear that?
Well, first of all, it's an incredible email because it sums up the show perfectly. But to hear that all comes across and it's resonated, it's amazing. Also, I liked what he said about the show being therapeutic. As somebody who deals with anxiety and depression myself, doing this show is helpful to me. Like this is like getting on here every week and just talking with my friends about movies. I'm very open about my mental health and my depression and my anxiety and OCD and stuff. So this to me is like it helps me. So it's cool that it helps him, but also know that doing it helps me. So it's kind of a mutual thing, Jacob. So that's awesome.
It is awesome. And more importantly, we're overlooking the fact that I sold another book through Jacob.
I think
so
more
thank
importantly, another name in the folder of people who confess to agreeing with me.
Agreeing with you? Yeah, that's very true.
We hear that quite a bit, don't we?
Yeah,
we do.
Yeah, we do.
Almost a little too much.
And Jake wins every game. Yeah, we know. We got you. We understand.
Our next premium episode is a mailbag. So if you guys want your questions answered on a mailbag show as part of premium, first off, send them in to us. And secondly, you can get access to the premium episodes at Real Blend Premium at cinemablend.com/RealBlendPremium. So in the meantime, follow us on social media. You know all of our channels by now. At Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovach, and the show is at Real Blend. Listen, it's gonna be hard to top Ridley Scott for a little while, but we do have some really exciting guests coming. We're gonna have Kevin's mom on next week. We're gonna go all the way back to the archives.
We just recorded next week's guest, which is actually fantastic.
Oh, with a surprise cameo.
Yeah. We'll save the surprise cameo for the week of.
That is very fun.
Wow.
So.
Yeah.
If you can for next week's interview, watch the video. It's like it was like one of the most organic, hilarious, it was awesome. Can we just say who it was?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's Camille Griffith, who wrote and directed a film called Silent Night, starring Keira Knightley and Matthew Good. and her son Roman, who you guys would know as the boy from Jojo Rabbit, and is also a co-star in this film too.
Sean, did you hear Roman's answer about his favorite Keira Knightley film?
I totally missed that. What is it?
Silent Nightly.
All right, we'll talk to you guys next week.
Dunkirk!
Leatherheads!
Leatherheads.